British, especially in the British Army, their colonel would also wear a turban. Upper class people are not supposed to wear turbans. The British were trying to actually use that concept to make these troops own that regiment. So all that money, even if you forget the troops, even if you look at all that money which was siphoned out of India,
right?
This was funding every activity the British were trying to do, whether war or industrial revolution or their society in general, rich getting richer, society improving. I think they were really siphoning a lot of all these resources. And then, yes, troops also went to fight this war.
As in most countries' history, the British are the villains for us.
Well, at that time there were. Now, debate is whether these Britons today, how much are they responsible?
Assalamualaikum ji. Today we are here with Mr. Talha. We're going to discuss culture, we're going to discuss Pakistan, we're going to discuss what happened to Pakistan, what happened to our culture, and what went wrong where. Talha sahab, sir, Pakistani culture के बारे में I've been given some very interesting information. कोई लोग मुझे कह रहे हैं कि जी बड़ा patriarchal culture है, बड़ा तंग नज़री वाला culture है, टोके वाले लोग आ जाएंगे, मुझे मार देंगे, मैंने कोई बात की पाकिस्तान के बारे में तो मैं तो गया ही गया. What is the reality? I mean, is our culture really closed, or are there still some source of intelligence in our culture, some hope for our culture? And most importantly, where did it all go wrong? Like, हुआ क्या हमारे साथ कि हम आज से 50 साल पहले welcoming and open थे और आज हम xenophobic और मारने के लिए तैयार हुए हैं?
I think fundamentally, I think the problems are from the very start. I think the problems were that we got into this education and training which did not belong to us.
Colonial British ने हमें टोके कब दिए?
These are side effects.
Side effects.
Side effects of this inherent lack of worth that we feel inside. When you belong to a culture where you're trying to mimic something which is not yours, you're trying to be someone else. The wannabe, as the Americans say, you're a wannabe. So I think we've become wannabes.
If we are wannabes usually are not very patriarchal. Wannabes don't usually do bunny. Wannabes don't usually do honor killing. Again, I don't think honor killing, sati कह रहा हूँ, wani वगैरह define our culture. मगर एक बहुत dominant narrative है कि यहाँ पे हमारे culture का part है औरतों पे जुल्म करना, औरतों की बात ना सुनना. Like, feminism for most Pakistanis is a bad word. In that context, how do you see colonialism impacting what we are today? I mean, isn't that too huge a leap to take, or is there a pathway to it?
I think it's just chain reaction. I think once you start doing something, it has long-term effects, and it has immediate effects, and then it has long-term effects. And I think what we're seeing now is that thing culminating now into this nice, lovely party that we're seeing now. Because either we have very ignorant people who've been ignored. Obviously, if there's lack of justice in some areas, then that will also create problems. And then obviously, colonial education is also not, it's not accessible to everyone. So then we have some very diverse, different sort of subgroups in our culture, which have very, very divergent cultures, first of all.
Right.
And they do not relate to each other.
So you mean जो हमारे मुल्क के elite है, for example, the top 1%, they have a culture that simply cannot be emulated or enjoyed by the 99%?
Clearly, उनका तो कोई, there's no relationship there. I mean, look at go to any party that elites are having, and there's no connection there with the commoners or other people or other sections of society.
But that's largely true for any modern democracy.
True, but here, I think there's languages are different, dresses are completely different, concept and philosophy is also very completely different. So it's not just the same person being slightly poor, so you have a cheaper fabric coat that you wear, or a jacket which is not perhaps as expensive, but you still know that this is the jacket to wear, and you will wear the same jacket. But no, it's completely different.
Completely different. There are no commonalities between the culture
not
of.
at all. I mean, look at the guards. They're wearing turbans, and the elites are not wearing turbans at all. So I mean, you don't find that at all.
Would you call that the murder of the turban by the British, or some other term?
No, I think it was lack of our understanding of what the British were trying to do.
Could you explain that?
Now, British, especially in the British Army, their colonel would also wear a turban.
Interesting.
Because that rank requires you to be out in the field with the troops. So you fight with the troops, and you give them the impression that this is your own regiment and you belong to this regiment. I also belong to it. So I'm being a British officer, I still wear that turban. But the British general did not wear it.
Interesting. Okay.
So the ignorant among us, when they looked at this situation, they thought that the upper class people are not supposed to wear turbans, and only the troops should wear turbans.
The rank and file.
Whereas the British were trying to actually use that concept to make these troops own that regiment, and the fact that even the commanding officer, the colonel, the lieutenant colonel, was also part of that unit and part of them. So that was the idea, I think, behind the British keeping that turban with the troops. But obviously their generals were serving the crown.
Yes, they were. The generals were serving the crown and trying to maintain peace and order in India itself. Would you think that India's contribution towards the First and Second World War was significant?
I think huge, yes. Very significant.
Hugely important for the British effort. And
very important. Crucially important.
Recently, I've read some research by British historians who said that India's contribution to the Great War was negligible. In fact, they say that the British Empire had to spend more resources in trying to keep India happy and trying to keep India organized, and they had stationed thousands of troops in India to keep peace and order. And in fact, India was a cost and a drag as far as the First World War was concerned. Do you believe that there's any truth in it, or is it just a manipulation of data?
I think they would love to say that. I mean, they would love to believe that. But the fact is that even in terms of simple British pounds being converted and going into Britain, historians now agree, most of them, that even this industrial revolution the British had was as a result of their loot and plunder from India. So all that money, even if you forget the troops.
Forget the troops.
Even if you look at all that money which was siphoned out of India,
right.
This was funding every activity the British were trying to do, whether war or industrial revolution or their society in general, rich getting richer, society improving. I think they were really siphoning a lot of all these resources, and then yes, troops also went to fight this war. So
as in most of history and as in most countries' history, the British are the villains for us.
Well, at that time there were. Now, debate is whether these Britons today, how much are they responsible?
Oh,
that's a separate debate.
Yes.
But I think at that time they were clearly villains. I mean, they killed millions of people.
We
look at other sections of society or other people dying in Europe or somewhere as a result of policy,
right.
Official policy, but we do not. I think we really undermine how many millions of people died as a result of British policy.
Yes, they did.
So saying that British were this was a drag, and the British obviously, if the British did not have any use for this. This huge
parcel of land,
this huge continent.
Right.
If they didn't have any use, they wouldn't have actually come here in the first place. The entire Europe was here. Why were they here if they had no advantage?
Money. That's why they were here.
Exactly. So resources, money, gold,
right.
jewels.
Well, glory, God, and gold. I mean, that's why the Virginia Company was formed. I mean, those three reasons were given as the reason for colonization.
Exactly. So that's like really going back and trying to erase some part of history, which will not work now.
And that impact on our culture, the colonization, the coming of the British, the ravaging of the land, that has led to a culture where we have a class that is extractive. We have a class which is, let's call them the elite or the 1% or the Ashrafia or whatever they're called. They are now our new colonial masters and our cultural masters?
In a way, yes, because I think the real problem is ownership, I think.
Ownership.
So how British were different from other empires or other invaders, let's say, coming into the Indian continent. British were not the only one.
Right.
There were other people who would come in, but they made it their home. So Mughals, for example, they came here and they settled, and then this was their identity.
Right.
British are the only rulers who had an empire in the Indian continent, along with, of course, the native empires, but they did not own it. They were siphoning money out of it, and their king would hardly, visit. Maybe on few occasions their monarch would come,
Right.
but they did not own it. So this was not their home, and as a matter of policy, British, all those British officers who actually were trying to domesticate themselves.
Right. Who got married to Indians.
Yes, and were getting to be
the
more
white,
Indian.
Yes, the white Indians.
The
yes.
white Indians.
Yes.
They were then posted out, or as a matter of policy, this structure of the deputy commissioner and the station house officer, the SHO, which is a very infamous character
Right.
these days. This was all as a result of British policy, because they then took power from top-ranking officers,
Right.
who were actually getting very Indianized, and then they gave these powers to the real powers to the deputy commissioner and the SHO, and then they were ruling through these two officials.
Tala Sahib, I have to ask you this, and it's a very important question. When do we expect this colonial hangover to end? It's been 74 bloody years. I mean, when are we going to let go of this? When are we going to stop talking about partition? I mean, हमारे culture में, it's still an issue. I still meet people for whom either their parents or their grandparents have told traumatic stories about partition. I mean, frankly, I wasn't there, so I do not know. I mean, my parents weren't there either, so they do not know. But are those things, like जो हमारी history के अंदर इतनी पुरानी बातें हैं, like the coming of the British, when will we let go of that and figure out on something, what happened after 1947? What is our culture today?
I think this will never happen if we do not change our education.
Okay.
If we do not change our approach to training young children.
Right.
I don't think we should be worried about people my age or older, because I think we are not open to.
So, sir, there's no hope for people like you and me. We're just done.
For me, I think, as far as I know, I think it'd be very difficult for us to be educated now on the harmful effects of our colonial past or training. But I think we must start with children, and this is a super 10,000-year-old civilization, recorded. I mean, it's older actually.
From Mohenjo-daro.
But and Mehergarh, and
Right.
and so this civilization has actually contributed to the entire world of what the world is now. It has excellence in all fields. Why can't we talk to our heritage? Why can't we talk to traditions? Why can't we explore ourselves in the process? Unless we get our children to start doing that, there's no way we can. I mean, we can't possibly keep getting that British education, or let's say remnants of British education left now.
So in that instance, you would suggest that we start focusing on education, teach our children what? That we did not gain independence from the British, we should not speak English, we should not... What exactly would be your
I think
recipe for
our
it?
narrative, for example, should change a bit. First of all, there were over 560 empires and states here. So we must start teaching children that we also had our own native empires here. We also had British Empire here.
But those native empires, they didn't amount to much. I mean, where are they now? I mean, ya to zam ho chuki hain, they're absorbed into India, Pakistan. Their culture is pretty much gone. I mean, it's something which is a faded glory in a way. The remnants of that are left, but the actual fact or the actual material, it's pretty much evaporated. Why should we hold on to that? Why is that? Why is that the basis of our culture?
Why should we hold on to any heritage or history for that matter? I think it's important for us to know the past and the fact that these empires and states voluntarily then they joined either India or Pakistan.
You use the word voluntarily very liberally. I don't think a lot of them voluntarily joined India and Pakistan. Some of them were coerced, forced, bought.
Later. I mean, after 47.
After 47.
Yeah. For example, Nizam of Hyderabad.
And Junagadh.
Chose to be independent.
Ji.
So then obviously the Indian army went in and then, so that's later. But I'm just saying that till 47.
Till 47.
These were rulers and they had their say.
Right.
Whether they want to join or not. And obviously British tried to very successfully persuade them and argue in favor of democracy, although they did not choose that democracy for themselves.
I like this idea of yours. Instead of using the British as a basis of our democracy or as our culture, we should use the princely states or the culture that existed before the arrival of the British.
I even have a problem with this term princely state, because these were thousands of years old rulers and dynasties. And Hyderabad, Deccan, for example, was the size of England.
Right.
And you had at one time 3-4 kings in England.
Right.
So why can't these be kings and rajas, which they should be?
Those are the proper terms to be used.
So this is, I think, another British treat for us, that they try and very, I think it's a very clever way of branding certain things so that they are undermined or downgraded. So these are princely states, but a small kingdom in Europe is a king.
Right. So I can understand the linguistic,
and they're very good at this.
Do.
British are very good at linguistics. I mean, look at us. We're speaking English as a result of our British teachers.
Yes.
So they're obviously very good at that.
Right.
But I think we need to look through that and look at the basis of what logically should be the position we should take. I refuse to call these princely states because they was empires and states in their own right.
Yes, they were, admittedly. I mean, I'm only using the term princely states because that's what historians have taught me to call them.
Yes, yeah.
And of course, the historians were trained and probably British to begin with. And again, a colonial image hai hamare paas, which continues and doesn't really go away. And
I don't have a problem with that colonial past. I don't say that we should not read or learn that history. In fact, we must learn a lot from that history. What happened, how it happened. And to erase that history would be, again, a huge disfavor.
It would.
All I'm saying is that we should not unnecessarily glorify it where it's not needed.
Do you think it is glorified? I mean,
very much so.
The British colonial empire that was left was glorified by the people who took over it?
Clearly.
In what manner?
I mean, there was a conference several years back, and it was a history conference, international history conference, and it had the slogan, the heading was, the name was, title was, the Punjab under the Raj.
The Punjab under the Raj.
Under the Raj.
Okay.
So I went in and I just wanted to know what it's all about. Which Raj are we talking about?
Right.
So I asked this historian friend of mine. I said, well, it doesn't really specify which Raj are we talking about. He said, obviously the British Raj. Now that is something that I have a problem with. It can't be that obvious. There were several Raj who were there, which existed in Punjab. So British was one of them. So just keep it that way.
So you should see the British or the arrival of the British or the colonial, the 200 years of colonization that we went through as merely one of the phases in our history, as compared to the Maratha Raj or the Mughal Empire.
Yes, I mean, it's like thousands of years. What is 90 years? Actually, the real crown was only 90 years.
Right.
Let's say, okay, even if East India Company is included.
200 years.
So at max.
At max.
So what we're looking at is 10,000 years of excellence. And there was no British there to teach us how to come up with decimal system that the British are using now.
Right.
So I think knowledge is all, humans make knowledge.
Right.
And then, yes, we utilize British knowledge. They've utilized a huge chunk of knowledge created from our part of the world.
Right.
And then the Arabs, we learn a lot from the Arab Islamic Empire.
Right.
They all do it. So maybe this 200 years or so are now the European or the American age. Give them that.
It's very interesting that you mentioned the Arabs, because from what I found in being in Pakistan and the culture that we've surrounded us is, there's a certain level of Arabization amongst the Pakistani population. And by your smiling, I think you know what I mean. I mean, there's a certain guttural alhamdulillah that happens whenever I speak to a Pakistani. And in fact, one of the shifts I've noticed is between Allah Hafiz and Khuda Hafiz. When I left Pakistan about 30 years ago, we were saying Khuda Hafiz. And now when I come back, everybody's telling me Allah Hafiz. What happened? Where did our language change? Why did this Arabization of our culture, of our language, of our... how did this happen? Are we being colonized by the Arabs now? I mean, is it a new party for us?
One thing is, of course, this term Allah is I think a technical thing. So maybe that is an example I wouldn't want to use, because Khuda is then God, and then can be several gods, but Allah is just one, and so Allah it's a technical religious term.
Right.
But you're right. I think a very, very interesting example would be the number plates we had a few years back. And it said Al-Pakistan.
Al-Pakistan, yes.
So just like, you had a plate on a Maybach or a Merc or a Rolls Royce, it says Al-Pakistan in Dubai, somewhere abroad in Arab world or Dubai or somewhere. They come up with this Al-Pakistan, whereas Urdu has a pay. So, it shouldn't have been a problem. But this is what I think you mean, this Arabization of...
My question here is, why are we so proud to have Al-Pakistan on our number plates?
We're proud of everything that is not Pakistani and powerful and glamorous. So we're proud of being Americans, we're proud of being... British are now slightly out of fashion, their time is gone.
Everyone wants to be Canadian. They're the most liked in the world right now.
So Canadians, or even better, Americans.
Right.
Turks.
Right.
When you had this Ertugrul, this series.
In fact, we want to talk about that cultural impact too, because I think shows like that have had a huge cultural impact on Pakistan. Probably because they were recommended by Qaidi number 804. But, there's an idea that our culture is not us. It is something else. We rather adopt something. Somebody should give us a pre-packaged solution that this is your culture, accept it. Zia did it. Bhutto did it. Ayub did it. I think even Qaid-e-Azam did it. Ek idea de diya ki bhai ab se aap log ye hain, and now you have to be this and nothing else. Is that justice?
Yes, can't be, because identity, as I always say, are building blocks. There are several blocks of identity. You can't possibly take out one block and say the other is your identity, but this block I'm keeping it somewhere else, or I'm throwing it away. I think that's what's happened. You're not a Punjabi, but you're a Pakistani. This is not how it works. I think you have to be all of who you are, and then you can be a good Pakistani, which is, I think, the real idea. We need to really be good Pakistanis, be patriotic Pakistanis. But that can only happen if we are to accept all of who we are. We are also from our school and college. We are also from our parents. That is not contradictory to our identity as Pakistanis.
मुखबरनामा करेगा तहलका खेज इंकशाफात